Amen. I'm going to be speaking to you for a few minutes from Hosea 3. And if you want to get your Bibles and read that, Hosea 3, that's fine, but I will read it aloud. When you have it, you can say amen. Hosea 3, and I'm coming from the ERV version that reads as such. Then the Lord said to me again, Gomer has many lovers, but you must continue loving her. Do this because it is an example of the Lord's love for Israel. He continues to love them, but they continue to turn to other gods, and they love to eat those raisin cakes. So I bought Gomer back for 6 ounces of silver and 9 bushels of barley. Then I told her, you must stay at home with me for many days. You will not be like a prostitute. You will not have sexual relations with any man. I will be your husband. And the other verse that I have is Matthew 10 and 29 through 31. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. And I want to talk to you today about a girl worth fighting for. Somebody say, a girl worth fighting for. In the blockbuster Disney animated film Mulan, a young woman dresses as a young man and takes the place of her ill and aging father in China's war against the Huns. The movie is set in a time where young women were not allowed to fight in the military, and during which they had to stay in their places lest they brought dishonor to the men in their lives and to their families as a whole. Mulan, understanding the risk she is taking, but decides that her being found out and bringing dishonor to her father and family, and even bringing death upon herself, does not compare to the thought of losing her father in war. There's a scene in the movie where the company of men Mulan is traveling with sees a group of women who are, of course, enamored with the soldiers. The women coyly blink and flirt, and the men begin to consider what it would be like if they had women of their own to come home to after the war. In true Disney fashion, the men begin to sing about the type of women they would want at home waiting for them. And as they begin to describe women who can cook, or women who are fair and beautiful, women with no faults, and women who tell them they're strong, the song's chorus raises, what do we want? A girl worth fighting for. I'm here to talk to you tonight, in the midst of this women's season, about the characteristics of a girl worth fighting for. When you hear the phrase, a girl worth fighting for, what types of words or images fill your mind? Women, like one of the soldiers wished for, who are beautiful beyond words? Is it a woman that's domesticated, that can cook or clean? Is it the kind of woman that's smart, loving, committed, wholesome? Well, in the book of Gomer, we meet a young woman by the name, in the book of Hosea, we meet a young woman by the name of Gomer. Gomer is a known prostitute. She's promiscuous and seems to have a sexual appetite that is insatiable. She is not committed. She is not considered wholesome. She is not described to be attentive. We never receive an account of her dressing her children or helping them with homework. She doesn't ask, how was your day? And then sit and listen to her family's accounts of what transpired at work or school or practiced. Neither is she painted to be a homemaker. We never find her cooking, nor keeping house, nor attending to the domestic needs of her family. By all accounts, Gomer is probably not what comes to mind when we think about a girl worth fighting for. Still, Hosea did, in fact, fight for Gomer. You know the story. Israel was under the rule of King Jeroboam II, and while they were experiencing great expansion and never before seen prosperity, along with that prosperity came moral and spiritual degeneration. Materialism and secularism filled the hearts of the Israelites, and sin ran rampant. Much like in today's society, there was substance abuse, lying, killing, stealing, adultery, fornication, oppression, perversion, and drunkenness, just to name a few. Still, the sin which made God's heart ache the most was that of idolatry, or the worship of gods, the extreme adoration, reverence, or love for something or someone other than God. The golden calves set up by Jeroboam I, about 150 years earlier, had opened the floodgates to every evil expression of Canaanite idolatry, including religious prostitution and human sacrifice. And Israel had become unfaithful to God and had developed a bad habit of abandoning the ways of the very God who had delivered them from bondage. But God still loved Israel very, very deeply, and he decided to use Hosea to help illustrate the picture of his unconditional love for his people. God instructed the prophet Hosea to marry Gomer, a lady of leisure, a streetwalker, a whore, a sex worker, a floozy, a trollop, a strumpet, a hooker, a harlot, a hussy, a hoe. I can just imagine Hosea's surprise at hearing that the Lord was instructing him to marry a woman that society looked upon with disdain. After all, Hosea is a prophet. And is not the prophet worthy of his hire? Surely Hosea must have reasoned to himself he was worth a woman who was a virgin, one who at the very least was not condemned to be stoned to death, as indicated in Deuteronomy 22:20. But yet the commandment stood. Hosea was to marry Gomer, and so he does. The only problem is that Gomer leaves Hosea and the 3 children they conceived together for another man and becomes a working girl again. And Hosea is left wondering, what in the LL Cool J is going on? Like how? What? Why? After he does exactly what God says for him to do, he finds himself on the road that many of us have traveled before. We do everything God has asked, and yet it seems we're worse off than we were before we listened to the voice of God. And then in chapter 3, verse 1, Hosea tells us that God is telling him that even though Gomer has many lovers, he has to go and get his wife. And so Hosea goes to where Gomer is in bed with one of her lovers, and he buys back his wife because God has instructed him to do so. Which brings me to my first point. Know your worth. Gomer knew her worth. Now, I know not everybody's going to agree with me, but I'd like you to consider for a moment the type of woman that it takes to realize that she's in receipt of something valuable, and then to put a price tag on that precious commodity and generate the flow of currency from the sale of said commodity. The fact that what Gomer was selling was her body leaves a bad taste in many of our mouths. But how many of us here today are selling ourselves short? How many of us are giving ourselves to men and women who are not worthy? How many of us are bending over backward and depleting ourselves for those who wouldn't even look our way if we truly needed them? How many of us are in relationships that are hurtful and hateful instead of healthy and helpful? At least Gomer was getting paid for her interactions. At the end of many of our relationships, we feel devalued and humiliated, downtrodden and hung out to dry, and we don't have anything to show for it. Y'all want to clarify? I want to clarify. I'm not in any way promoting nor condoning prostitution. What I am saying is to realize that you're valuable. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has counted every hair on your head. So, know your worth, queen. And when someone tries to sell you short, even if that someone is you, remember who you are and whose you are. Somebody say, know your worth. The second thing you need to do is grow your worth. Say, grow your worth. In verse 3 of chapter 3, Hosea buys his wife back for about the price of a slave. Now, back in those days, women usually slept with different lovers to obtain some type of life-maintaining sustenance. A loaf of bread, corn, oil, barley. These were items commonly bartered in exchange for a prostitute. But for one to procure a slave, they'd have to pay much more. Hosea had already paid once to wed his wife Gomer, and here we find him paying yet again. He renders currency in the equivalent of about 30 pieces of silver to get his wife back. And because Gomer was so important to him, Hosea was willing to pay that exorbitant price for someone who was supposed to be his in the first place. Okay, I'm not going to ask how many of us are trying to buy someone who's supposedly supposed to be ours in the first place. I'm just going to go to the story of Hosea and Gomer. So Hosea goes, he buys his wife from the lover, and Gomer's market value has gone up. Nevertheless, he was willing to pay much more than others had paid. And Gomer went from being about the price of one loaf of bread to being worth more than 200 loaves of bread. Somehow, she was worth more to Hosea than she was after she left him than she was when he first married her. It's funny how that happens sometimes, right? Like, as long as we're with that Mr. or Mrs., they're all raggedy and broke down. And as soon as they leave us, they want to glow up. But we could all take a lesson from Gomer's Good Girl Guide of Investment. Again, I'm not suggesting that we sell our bodies or get paid for sexual favors. What I'm saying is we should be taking a critical look at ourselves on a consistent basis. If you're finding that you haven't reached some of the goals and accomplishments that you set for yourself, and you're not pleased with the person you're projecting, then perhaps you need to grow your worth. Say, grow your worth. Not only do you need to take a long, hard look at yourself and see where you can make improvements to your life mentally and spiritually, and even perhaps physically, right? But you can also take what I'm saying literally and invest in something that will help your finances to grow. Grow your worth. Now, after you know your worth, and then you take time to invest in yourself, and you grow your worth, honey, that's when it's time to show your worth. Turn to your neighbor and say, show your worth. After Hosea went and bought his wife back, he took her home and he told her straight up, I'm your husband, you're my wife, you're going to act like my wife. No more sex with other people. He wasn't intimate with her right away because she had to prove that she was going to stay faithful to him. She had to show her worth. And we have to do the same thing. You have to walk like the woman of God that you are. Show your worth. I'm talking about strut your stuff till they can't get enough. And if you're not quite where you want to be, then you fake it till you make it. I heard somebody say it like this, faith it till you make it. Because the Bible says that we speak those things that be not as though they are. So we say it and believe it, then we walk it like we talk it. What? Walk it like we talk it, and then you walk it until you've achieved it. Okay? And I've talked about you walking with confidence, and I was talking about your physical walk, right? Your strut, your gait, right? But let me remind you that our spiritual walk with God is what helps us to know our worth and grow our worth and show our worth. But one of the biggest parts of showing your worth is realizing that the God that is on the inside of you is on the inside of others. So I know I'm up here and, I was kind of late and I had a rough day and I look kind of cute, right? But I'm talking about Gomer and I'm calling her a hoe and a prostitute, but that's just what they refer to her as in the Bible. But let me be crystal clear. I need you to understand that that sister is not the sum total of her occupation or her oversights. Neither should she be judged by her employment nor her indiscretions. Like casting stones in a glass house, we have a horrible tendency of talking about each other and calling each other names. When I was younger, the kids would say, it takes one to know one. And I need you to understand, your appraisal is not contingent on what any human thinks or says about you. You grow in worth the more you commune with God. And then you show your worth by reflecting what's on the inside of you and allowing others to be free to do the same. You ought to turn to your neighbor right now and say, Namaste. That means the God in me recognizes and acknowledges the God in you. And I assert to you on this evening, it takes one to know one. I see you, queen, so show your worth. There's a video going around the internet. I know you've seen it. I know you have. It's a video of this well-known speaker, and he holds up a $20 bill. He asks, in a room of 200 people, who would like this $20 bill? And all the hands start going up all around the room. He says, I am going to give you this $20 bill, but first, let me do this. And then he proceeds to crumple the $20 bill in his hand. And he asks, who still wants this $20 bill? All the hands still go up. He said, well, what if I do this? And he drops it on the floor. He grinds it down in the dirt with his shoe. He picks it up. It's now crumpled and it's dirty. He says, does anybody still want it now? And the people still raise their hands. And he says, my friends, you have all learned a very valuable lesson. No matter what I did to the money, you still wanted it because it didn't decrease in value. It was still worth $20. And many times in our lives, we're dropped, crumbled, and ground into the dirt by decisions we make and the circumstances that come our way. We feel as though we're worthless. But no matter what has happened in your life, and no matter what will happen, you are still valuable. You will never lose your value. Dirty or clean, crumpled or finely creased, you are still priceless to those who love you. The worth of our lives comes not in what we do, or who we do, or what we do, right? But in who we are. You're special, and don't you ever forget it. The story of Hosea and Gomer illustrates God's patience and forgiveness, but most of all, it shows the love of God and how God is willing to buy back his bride at any cost. And yes, the entire church is known as the bride of Christ, but I'm speaking specifically to the women in here on tonight. I know that some of you in here feel like you're unworthy of God's love and redemption, but I'm here to let you know that you're special. And God loves you. I don't care what decisions you've made that make you feel less than wholesome. I don't care who told you you were too fat or too old or too sick or not pretty enough or you just, whatever they say, whatever values or characteristics others have assigned to you, I'm unconcerned with that because I don't know if you know, but you're God's girl. You were bought with a price, and you're worth more than diamonds and rubies to God. And if God takes care of the sparrows and makes sure they're fed and protected, even though they cost merely a few cents, you have got to know that you who are fearfully and wonderfully made are going to be taken care of by God. His eye is on the sparrow, but I know he watches you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. So no matter what anybody tries to tell you, I need you to remember, like the help would say, you is smart, you is kind, and you is important. But I mean it. You need to know that you are amazing. You are beautiful. You are needed. You are important. And you are loved. You are a woman of God. He's fighting every battle for you, but you've got to fight as well. Fight against any thought that tells you you are anything but a virtuous and victorious woman of God. And know your worth, grow your worth, and show your worth, because you are absolutely, positively a girl worth fighting for.
Minister Nyesha, thank you. Give her another hand, honey.